She only wanted to fix her broken shoe. Instead, she fell into the most sacred throne in the kingdom, and it glowed. Now the Alpha King won't let her leave, his jealous admirers want her dead, and the throne itself seems to have chosen her. Cordelia is just an archivist who files things. She's not supposed to be anyone's fated mate. Let's begin. The problem with being a wallflower at a werewolf gala, Cordelia thought, was that eventually someone tried to hang a coat on you. She pressed her spine harder against the cold marble pillar in the grand ballroom of the Ironfang Keep, clutching a glass of untouched champagne so tightly her knuckles were bone-white. All around her, the wealth and power of the Northern Territories swirled in a dizzying display of silk gowns and flashing fangs. Women draped in diamonds laughed a little too loudly, their eyes darting toward the dais where the Alpha King's empty throne sat like a sleeping beast. Bryce Blackwell, the Alpha King, hadn't arrived yet. And until he did, the room was just a cage full of restless predators. Cordelia was not supposed to be here. She was a junior archivist in the Pack Library, a keeper of dusty ledgers, not a guest at the mating season ball. She'd only been sent by her supervisor, Magdalene, to deliver an updated bloodline scroll to the Chamberlain Philip. Straight to Philip, handed over, and straight back to the archives. Magdalene had rasped, her spectacles glinting. Do not stop for a drink. Do not make eye contact with any male who smells like he spends more on cologne than on pack tithes. And for the moon's sake, Cordelia, do not touch anything. Cordelia had nodded obediently. She was excellent at not touching things. She was excellent at being invisible. She was a low-ranking Omega, useful for her neat handwriting and her ability to squeeze into the library's tight attic spaces. She was not useful for navigating a ballroom full of she-wolves who could smell weakness. She scanned the crowd for Philip's graying head of hair, but saw only a sea of predatory smiles. Her feet were screaming in the second-hand heels Anna, the only friend she had in the Keep's laundry, had loaned her. The strap was digging into her heel, the blister already weeping. Just find Philip, she whispered to herself, taking a small, desperate step away from the pillar. That was her first mistake. The second was looking toward the dais. The Alpha King's throne was magnificent and terrifying, carved from obsidian, draped in the fur of a white dire wolf. But next to it, slightly smaller and bathed in a soft shaft of silver moonlight from the stained-glass dome above, was the Luna throne. It was a piece of living history. Cordelia had read about it in the archives. Carved from a single piece of moonstone, its surface looked like frozen milk. Legend said the stone was cool to the touch even in summer, and that it could only be warmed by the true flame of the pack. It had sat empty for over 20 years, ever since the previous Luna died. It was so sacred, even the maids had to use a special, non-abrasive cloth to dust it. Cordelia just wanted a better view of the historical stonework, and the blister on her heel felt like someone was holding a lit match to her skin. I'll just lean against the bottom step for a second, she reasoned. Just to take the pressure off my foot. No one will notice. They're all too busy preening for the king. She limped toward the dais, the crowd parting naturally for someone they didn't register as a threat or a prize. She reached the 3 steps leading up to the twin thrones and turned around, intending to sit on the cold marble step to adjust her shoe strap. But the heel, that cursed broken heel Anna had promised, was just fine, caught in the hem of her taffeta skirt. Gravity yawned open beneath her. Cordelia gasped, her arms pinwheeling. She stumbled backward up the stairs, the champagne glass flying from her hand and shattering against the floor like a gunshot. And then she fell, not onto the floor. She fell backward into the seat of the Moonstone Luna throne. The silence that hit the Ironfang ballroom was more deafening than any howl. The string quartet screeched to a discordant halt. 200 heads turned as one. Cordelia's breath seized in her lungs. The stone was indeed cool against her bare shoulders, but it was a coolness that was rapidly becoming warm. She tried to scramble out, to apologize, to explain that it was an accident, that her shoe was a traitor, but her body wouldn't move. Get off that throne, the voice was a sharp hiss from the front of the crowd. Cordelia recognized the glossy red hair of Anna, her friend from the laundry, who was staring up at her with wide, horrified eyes, frantically waving for her to jump down. She's just a librarian, Anna yelped, trying to push through the wall of frozen onlookers. It's a mistake, she fell. But no one was listening to Anna. They were staring at the throne, because the throne was staring back. The milky white moonstone veins running through the backrest began to shimmer. A faint internal light bloomed from within the rock, turning the pale stone into a vessel of liquid starlight. It pulsed once, twice, a gentle thrum of magic that vibrated up through Cordelia's tailbone and into her very core. She wasn't just sitting on a chair. She was locked in it. By the goddess, Magdalene, the head librarian, whispered from somewhere in the crowd, her voice trembling with religious terror. That was when the main doors at the end of the hall blew inward, propelled by a gust of icy wind that smelled of pine forests and raw, untamed power. Bryce Blackwell, the Alpha King, filled the doorway. He was taller than any man had a right to be, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the entire Packland. His dark hair was slicked back, but a single unruly curl fell over a scar that bisected his left eyebrow. His eyes, the color of polished silver, swept the room with the bored, lethal laziness of a wolf who knew he owned every square inch of the territory. "Who?" Bryce's voice was low and soft, a sound that made every she-wolf in the room shiver involuntarily. "Is sitting in my mother's chair." Philip the Chamberlain finally pushed through the crowd, his face as pale as the glowing throne itself. "Your Grace!" She fell. "We'll remove her immediately." Guards, two massive warriors, started toward the dais. Cordelia wanted to cry out that she was stuck, that it wasn't her fault, but her voice was a tiny, trapped mouse in her throat. The guards reached the top step. The first one, a burly man named Victor, reached for her arm. The light from the throne flared bright as a supernova. A shield of white-hot energy snapped outward, catching Victor square in the chest. The sound of his body hitting the floor 20 feet away was sickening. The second guard backed away, hands raised in surrender, his face a mask of superstition and fear. The throne wouldn't let them touch her. The glow softened again, wrapping around Cordelia's trembling frame like a possessive lover. Bryce Blackwell's silver eyes narrowed. The boredom was gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory focus that locked onto Cordelia as if she were the only other living thing in the world. He walked toward the dais. Slowly. Each step of his polished leather shoe on the marble floor echoed like a death knell. Philip scurried behind him. "Your Grace, perhaps the stone is malfunctioning. A fluke in the lunar cycle." "Be silent, Philip." Bryce stopped at the foot of the stairs, looking up at her. He was close enough now that she could smell him, wintergreen and smoke. He didn't try to touch her. He just looked. He looked at her trembling hands, her horrified face, and the throne that was now humming a song only she could hear. Cordelia finally found her voice, a croak of pure desperation. I'm sorry, my shoe broke." Corner of Bryce's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile. It was the expression of a man who had just found an unexpected, intriguing puzzle piece under the sofa. "Your shoe broke," he repeated flatly. "And the sacred throne of my bloodline, which has rejected every female of noble birth in this room for 2 decades, has just decided to bond itself to a woman with a broken shoe." He took one step up. The light didn't flare at him. It merely pulsed, as if waiting. "What is your name, little archivist?" "See Cordelia." "Cordelia," Bryce said, and the sound of her name in his deep voice sent a traitorous shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. "It seems the moon goddess has a terrible sense of humor, and it seems you and I have a great deal to discuss." Throne still hummed beneath her, a vibration so deep it felt like a second heartbeat in her bones. Cordelia couldn't move. Not because the magic held her anymore, that had loosened the moment Bryce stepped onto the dais, but because the Alpha King was standing over her and his shadow swallowed her whole. "I asked you a question," Bryce said, his voice a low rumble that didn't carry past the steps. "A private interrogation in a room full of witnesses. How did you bypass the blood ward?" Cordelia blinked. "The what?" "The blood ward." His silver eyes flicked to the throne's glowing veins. "Only a female of direct Blackwell lineage or one destined by the moon goddess can touch this seat without being incinerated. I've watched noblewomen blister their palms just brushing the armrest. And you?" He leaned down, his face inches from hers. She could see the flecks of storm gray in his irises. "You fell into it and the throne threw a guard across the room to protect you." "Don't know." The words tumbled out, high and panicked. "I'm nobody. I'm an Omega. I file parchment. I eat lunch alone in the East Tower because the kitchen staff forgets I exist. I don't have a bloodline. My parents were traders who died in a river crossing when I was 3. Magdalene took me in because I could read. That's it, that's all." Bryce stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he straightened and turned to face the crowd. "Ball is over," he announced. His voice carried now, sharp as a blade. "Everyone out, now." There was a beat of stunned silence, then the rustle of expensive fabric as 200 wolves scrambled to obey. No one argued with the Alpha King. No one even whispered. They just flowed toward the exits like water around a stone, casting furtive, hungry glances back at Cordelia. Anna lingered by the servant's entrance, her round face creased with worry. She caught Cordelia's eye and mouthed, "I'll find you later," before a guard ushered her out. Magdalene, however, did not move. The head librarian stood near the front of the emptying hall, her spectacles catching the light of the chandeliers and turning her eyes into blank, reflective discs. She clutched a leather satchel to her chest, the satchel Cordelia had been meant to deliver to Philip. "Magdalene," Bryce said without turning around. "That includes you." "Grace." Magdalene's voice was thin but steady. "The girl is my ward. I am responsible for her, whatever punishment she faces for this desecration." Desecration. Bryce finally looked at the old woman. "Is that what you think this is?" Magdalene's jaw tightened. "I think she sat where she should not have sat. I think the throne's reaction is unprecedented, and I think I should remain to speak on her behalf." Alpha King considered this. Then he nodded once. "Philip, escort the librarian to my study. She can wait there." Philip, who had been hovering near the shattered champagne glass like a man hopping the floor might swallow him, sprang into action. "Of course, Your Grace. Madame Magdalene, if you'll follow me." Magdalene's eyes lingered on Cordelia for a heartbeat too long. There was something in that look, not anger, not fear, something else. Something Cordelia couldn't name. Then the old woman turned and followed Philip out, her sensible shoes clicking a sharp rhythm on the marble. The massive doors groaned shut. The echo faded, and then it was just the two of them. Cordelia became acutely aware of several things at once. The throne was still warm beneath her, like a living thing pressed against her spine. Her broken shoe dangled uselessly from her toes, and Bryce Blackwell was now standing close enough that she could see the faint scar tissue on his knuckles, the kind that came from years of fighting and never quite healing right. Cordelia had spent her entire life in the Iron Fang Keep, but she had never felt more like a stranger than she did standing in a dead woman's solarium, staring at a magical mark that refused to fade from her palm. She tried rubbing it. She tried scrubbing it with the edge of her sleeve. The silver crescent remained, luminous and permanent, as if it had always been there and she'd simply never noticed. "This can't be right," she said, more to herself than to Bryce. "The bond mark only appears for fated mates. It's supposed to be romantic, a gift from the goddess, not a clerical error." "You calling the moon goddess a bureaucrat?" Bryce asked dryly. Cordelia's head snapped up. Was that humor? The Alpha King's face remained impassive, but there was a glint in his silver eyes that hadn't been there before. "I'm calling this a mistake," she said firmly. "I file mistakes all the time, birth records with wrong dates, marriage certificates with misspelled names. Once I found a death certificate filed under living residence, and the wolf in question had been dead for 40 years. This," she held up her palm, "this is just a cosmic filing error." Bryce leaned against the dust-sheeted arm of a sofa, crossing his arms. The movement pulled his formal jacket tight across his shoulders, and Cordelia very determinedly did not notice. Remarkably calm for a woman who just discovered she's bound to the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. "I'm not calm," Cordelia said. "I'm dissociating, there's a difference. Anna taught me the word. It's when your brain decides reality is too much and just steps out for a walk. Anna works in the laundry. She reads a lot of psychology books. She says it helps her understand why rich people act the way they do." Bryce's mouth twitched. "I'll have to meet this Anna." The casual statement hit Cordelia like a bucket of cold water. Meet Anna, because Cordelia would be staying. Because the Alpha King's fated mate couldn't exactly go back to filing parchment in the archives. The reality of her situation crashed back down, and her breath went short and shallow. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to be a Luna. I don't know how to host dinners or manage a household or command respect. I eat alone in the East Tower because I don't know how to make small talk. Magdalene had to teach me how to address nobles properly because I kept accidentally using the informal conjugation and insulting their bloodlines." Bryce was quiet for a long moment. Then he pushed off the sofa and walked to the bookshelf, running his fingers along the spines of his mother's books. "My mother was a baker's daughter," he said. Cordelia blinked. "What?" "Before she met my father, she kneaded dough for 12 hours a day in a village so small it didn't have a name." Her hands were permanently dusted with flour. The first time she walked into this keep, she tripped on her dress and fell face first into the ceremonial punch bowl. "That can't be true. It's in the official records. Philip's predecessor wrote it down." The Lady Isolde has baptized herself in raspberry cordial. The Alpha is laughing so hard he cannot breathe. Bryce turned to face her. She wasn't born to this either. She learned. She grew into it. And according to everyone who knew her, she became the greatest Luna this pack has ever seen. Cordelia processed this. The portrait above the fireplace showed a woman of grace and poise, the kind of woman who never tripped or stammered or ate alone. But Bryce was describing someone else entirely. Someone who sounded almost human. Why are you telling me this? Because you're standing in her solarium with her mark on your palm, and you just told me you eat alone in a tower. His voice softened just slightly. I eat alone too, in the Great Hall, surrounded by people. It's the loneliest meal I've ever had. Before Cordelia could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the solarium. The door swung open and Philip stood in the doorway, his face a careful mask of professional neutrality. Forgive the interruption, Your Grace, but there is a matter that requires your immediate attention. It wait? I'm afraid not. Philip's eyes flicked to Cordelia, then back to Bryce. Noble families are refusing to leave the keep grounds. They're gathering in the outer courtyard. Lady Evangeline of the Silverbrook Pack is demanding an audience. She claims the Omega has. Bewitch the sacred throne through dark means. Her words, Your Grace, not mine. Cordelia's blood ran cold. Lady Evangeline was everything Cordelia was not: tall, elegant, razor-tongued, and the daughter of the second most powerful pack in the territory. She had been the presumed favorite to become the next Luna. Every gossip in the keep had been certain of it. Bryce's expression hardened into something dangerous. She accuses my fated maid of witchcraft. The mark hasn't been made public yet, Your Grace. They only know the throne glowed and rejected the guard. Then it's time they learned. Bryce strode toward the door, his presence filling the room like a winter storm. He paused at the threshold and looked back at Cordelia. Stay here. The solarium is warded. No one enters without my blood or my permission. Wait, Cordelia stepped forward. You can't just leave me here. If they're accusing me of dark magic, I should defend myself. I should explain what happened. Explain what? That your shoe broke. Bryce's voice was gentle but firm. Cordelia, these are wolves who have spent years scheming to put their daughters on that throne. They won't believe a story about broken footwear. They'll see what they want to see, a threat to their ambitions. Then what are you going to tell them? Bryce's smile was a sharp, wolfish thing. The truth, that the moon goddess chose you, that the mark has appeared, and that anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. He was gone before she could argue, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Philip lingered for a moment, his expression unreadable. Library, Cordelia said quietly. Magdalene, is she still waiting in his study? She is. Would you like me to send her to you? Cordelia thought about it. Magdalene had raised her, fed her, taught her everything she knew. But there had been something in the old woman's eyes in the ballroom. Something Cordelia couldn't name. No, she said finally. Not yet, but could you? Could you find Anna, the laundry girl, and send her here? Philip inclined his head. I will see what I can do, my lady. He left, and Cordelia was alone with the dust and the ghosts and the portrait of a baker's daughter who had become a legend. She walked to the writing desk and sat down in the small wooden chair. The cushion was flat from years of use, and she imagined Bryce's mother sitting here, writing letters, watching the moon through the stained glass ceiling. On the desk, beneath a thin layer of dust, was a leather journal. Cordelia hesitated, then opened it. The first page was dated 24 years ago. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, as if the writer had been racing against time. I have seen it. The girl with the broken shoe. She will come when the moon is high and the keep is full of false smiles. She will not mean to sit. She will not want to stay, but she is the one. The stone has shown me she will save him, or she will destroy him. I cannot see which. I am sorry, my son. I am sorry, unknown girl. But some threads cannot be unspun. Cordelia's hands trembled. She turned the page, but the rest of the journal was blank. Just empty parchment, waiting for someone else to fill it. Outside, the sound of raised voices drifted up from the courtyard. The noble families demanding answers, demanding her head. And somewhere beneath her feet, so faint she almost imagined it, she felt the Luna throne pulse again. Waiting. Stand up, he said. She tried. Her legs were jelly. She wobbled, the broken heel twisting under her weight, and she would have tumbled down the stairs if Bryce hadn't caught her arm. His grip was iron. His palm was hot. And the moment his skin touched hers, the throne screamed. Not a sound. A feeling. A surge of white-hot energy that shot up through the soles of her feet, through her bloodstream, through every nerve ending until she felt like she was being unmade and remade in the span of a single heartbeat. The moonstone throne flared brilliant silver, casting their shadows sharp and black against the far wall. Bryce hissed and released her arm as if burned. He looked down at his palm, then at her, his expression shifting from controlled curiosity to something rower. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "I don't." Cordelia pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart was racing, but it wasn't fear. It was something else. Something that felt like recognition. "I felt warm, and then I felt like I knew you, but I don't know you at all." Bryce's jaw worked. He flexed his hand, the one that had touched her, and Cordelia could have sworn she saw the faintest tremor in his fingers. "Come with me," he said abruptly. He turned and strode toward a side door she hadn't noticed before, half hidden behind a tapestry depicting the first howl. Cordelia hesitated. The throne had gone quiet again, its glow dimming to a soft pulse like a sleeping animal. She took a cautious step away from it. Nothing happened. Another step. Still nothing. She kicked off her ruined shoes and followed him barefoot, her torn stockings whispering against the cold stone floor. The side door led to a narrow corridor lit by iron sconces. The flames were real, not electric, and they flickered as Bryce passed, as if bowing to him. Cordelia hurried to keep up, her bare feet silent on the smooth stone. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Luna's solarium." He didn't slow down. "It hasn't been opened in 23 years, not since my mother died." Cordelia's steps faltered. "Why are you taking me there?" "Because the throne lit up for you. Because the bond mark on my hand." He stopped so suddenly she almost collided with his back. He turned, holding up his right palm. There, in the center of his calloused hand, was a faint silver mark. It looked like a crescent moon, no bigger than a thumbnail, glowing softly against his skin. "This mark appears when an alpha finds their fated mate," Bryce said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Hasn't appeared for me, not once, not in 32 years. I assumed I was one of the rare alphas destined to rule alone." His silver eyes dropped to her hand. "Show me your palm." Trembling, Cordelia raised her right hand and uncurled her fingers, the same mark. The same silver crescent, glowing softly in the center of her palm. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, no." "No" is one way to put it. Bryce's voice was dry, but there was an edge beneath it, an uncertainty that looked foreign on his sharp features. "The other way is that the moon goddess has a truly spectacular sense of irony." "An Omega," Cordelia whispered, staring at the mark. "I'm nobody. I organize tax records. I can't be your mate." Bryce finished the word she couldn't say. "No, you can't be, and yet." He resumed walking, faster now, his long legs eating up the corridor. Cordelia had to jog to keep up. "Your Grace." "Bryce." "What?" "If we're bound by a goddess, you can use my name." They reached the end of the corridor. A door stood before them, older than the others, its wood dark with age and carved with the same crescent moon that now marked both their palms. Bryce pressed his marked hand to the wood, and the door swung inward without a sound. The room beyond was frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the moonlight streaming through a stained glass ceiling. The furniture was draped in white sheets, ghostly shapes in the dimness. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes that smelled of vanilla and age. A small writing desk sat by the window, a dried-up inkwell and a single white feather resting on its surface. But Cordelia's eyes went straight to the portrait above the fireplace. The woman in the painting had Bryce's silver eyes and sharp cheekbones. But where Bryce was all hard edges and winter frost, she was softness and moonlight. Her hair was a cascade of silver blonde, and she wore a gown the color of forget-me-nots. She was smiling, a real smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Your mother," Cordelia breathed. "Yes." Bryce's voice had gone rough. He wasn't looking at the portrait, he was looking at the writing desk. "She died when I was 9, a rogue attack on the eastern border. She wasn't supposed to be there. She went because she had a feeling. A premonition, she called it." He walked to the desk and picked up the white feather. It crumbled to dust in his fingers. "Before she left, she told me something. I thought it was a child's bedtime story. A myth to make me feel better about losing her." He turned to face Cordelia, and his expression was unreadable. "She said, 'One day a girl will sit in my chair. She won't mean to, she won't want to, but the stone will know her and so will you. When that day comes, bring her here. Bring her to my solarium, and tell her I'm sorry for what comes next.'" The silence stretched between them, heavy and cold. Cordelia wrapped her arms around herself. "What comes next?" Bryce looked at the mark on his palm, then at hers. When he spoke, his voice was the quietest she'd heard it yet. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." Somewhere deep in the keep, a wolf howled. And in the ballroom they'd left behind, the empty Luna throne pulsed once, twice, and then went dark. Anna arrived like a small hurricane in a stained apron. The laundry girl burst through the solarium door, her red hair escaping its braid in wild tendrils, her cheeks flushed from running. She took one look at Cordelia sitting at the dead Luna's desk and promptly burst into tears. Alive, Anna wailed, crossing the room in 3 strides and pulling Cordelia into a crushing embrace that smelled of lavender soap and starch. I thought they were going to execute you. I thought I was going to have to break you out of the dungeons. I already started hiding bread rolls in my room. Cordelia, whose face was smushed against Anna's shoulder, managed a muffled, "Why bread rolls? They don't go bad as fast as fruit. I was being strategic." Anna pulled back, gripping Cordelia by the shoulders and examining her with the intensity of a battlefield medic. "You're pale. You're shaking. Your shoes are gone. Did he hurt you? I'll kill him. I don't care if he's the Alpha King. I'll starch his undershirts so aggressively he'll itch for a month." "Didn't hurt me." Cordelia caught Anna's hands before she could start plotting laundry-based revenge. "Anna, something happened, something impossible." She showed Anna her palm. Anna stared at the silver crescent mark. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she did something Cordelia had never seen her do in 5 years of friendship. She sat down heavily on the floor, right there in the dust, and said a very unladylike word. "That's the mate bond," Anna whispered. "That's the actual mate bond. Cordelia, you're the Alpha King's fated mate. I know, you're going to be Luna. I know, you're going to have to wear gowns and host dinners and talk to people. I know," Cordelia's voice cracked. "Anna, I can't do this. I file things. I'm good at filing things. Alphabetical, chronological, by bloodline, by territory. I once reorganized the entire tax record system from 1802 to 1950, and Magdalene said it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. That's my skill. That's my only skill." Anna's expression softened. She squeezed Cordelia's hands, her grip warm and solid. "Okay," she said. "Okay, let's think about this logically. You're good at filing, right? So what is a pack if not a really complicated filing system?" Cordelia blinked. "What? Think about it. You've got families, that's categories. You've got bloodlines, that's subcategories. You've got alliances and feuds and trade agreements, that's cross-referencing. You've been training for this your whole life without knowing it. You just need to think of the pack as a really, really messy archive that no one's organized properly in decades." Despite everything, Cordelia felt a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. "That's actually not a terrible analogy. I know, I'm brilliant. It's wasted in the laundry." Anna grinned, but it faded quickly as her eyes drifted to the window. "They're still out there, you know, the nobles. I had to sneak through the servants' passages to get here. Lady Evangeline has worked herself into a proper frenzy. She's telling anyone who will listen that you used forbidden magic to seduce the throne." "I didn't seduce anything. I fell." Telling her that. "She's got an audience and she knows how to use it." Anna's voice dropped. "Cordelia, you need to be careful. Lady Evangeline didn't spend 3 years positioning herself to be Luna just to step aside for an Omega archivist. She'll come for you. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but she will." A cold finger traced down Cordelia's spine. "What do I do?" "First, you put on some proper shoes. My cousin works in the wardrobes. I can get you something that isn't a torn ball gown. Second, you eat something. You look like you're about to faint. Third," a thunderous roar shook the keep. It wasn't a sound. It was a presence, a wave of pure alpha authority that rolled through the stone walls and vibrated in Cordelia's chest. Anna gasped and clutched her ears, even though the sound hadn't been loud in the traditional sense. It was deeper than that, primal, Bryce. That came from the courtyard, Anna breathed. "He's using the alpha voice." Cordelia was already moving, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. "I need to see." "Cordelia, he told you to stay here. He told me to stay in the solarium." She grabbed Anna's wrist and pulled her toward the door. "The solarium has a balcony that overlooks the courtyard. I'm not leaving the room. I'm just observing from a different angle." Anna muttered something about technicalities and stubborn archivists, but she followed. The balcony was small and wrought iron, hidden behind heavy velvet curtains that had once been blue but were now the color of faded twilight. Cordelia pushed through them and stepped into the cold night air. Below, the outer courtyard was a sea of torchlight and furious faces. At least 50 nobles had gathered, their fine clothes rumpled from hours of waiting, their eyes gleaming with barely contained aggression. They stood in clusters by family, by alliance, by bloodline. Cordelia recognized the colors: Silverbrook's pale blue, Ironwood's forest green, Night River's deep purple. all the great packs of the northern territories, united in their suspicion. And at the center of them all stood Lady Evangeline. She was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, tall and slender, with hair the color of spun gold and eyes like chips of amber ice. She wore a gown of silver white that caught the torchlight and made her look almost luminous, almost holy. Her voice carried across the courtyard, clear and cutting. Insult to every noble house in this territory. For 20 years, the Luna throne has remained empty. For 20 years, we have waited, patient and faithful, for the goddess to choose. And now we are told that an Omega, a woman with no bloodline, no pack allegiance, no family name, has somehow awakened the sacred stone. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Girl is clearly a witch, Evangeline continued, her voice rising. She has bewitched the throne through dark means. Perhaps she has even bewitched our Alpha King himself. I demand she be brought before us. I demand she be tested by the elders. And if she is found guilty of dark magic, I demand. You demand a great deal, Lady Evangeline. Bryce's voice cut through the courtyard like a winter wind. He emerged from the keep's main doors, and the crowd parted before him instinctively. He had shed his formal jacket and stood in just his white shirt and dark trousers, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The scar across his eyebrow seemed more pronounced in the torchlight, and his eyes, his silver eyes, were burning. Let me be perfectly clear, Bryce said, descending the steps with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator. Cordelia is not a witch. She did not use dark magic. She fell. She fell into a throne that has rejected every woman in this courtyard, and the throne chose her. Chose her. Evangeline's laugh was brittle. Your Grace, with all due respect, thrones do not choose. Magic does not choose. Someone must have guided it. Someone must have. Bryce held up his right hand. The silver crescent mark glowed in the torchlight, bright and undeniable. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Several nobles actually stepped backward. Mate bond has manifested, Bryce said quietly, but his quiet was louder than Evangeline's shouting. For the first time in my life, the mark has appeared. It appeared the moment I touched her. The goddess has spoken. Cordelia is my fated mate, and she will be your Luna. Silence, absolute, devastating silence, and then Evangeline's face changed. The mask of righteous indignation slipped, just for a moment, and beneath it Cordelia saw something raw and ugly. Jealousy, humiliation, rage. No, Evangeline whispered. No, I refuse to accept this. The goddess would not choose an Omega over me. She would not choose a nobody over a daughter of Silver Brook. This is a trick, a manipulation. That mark could be forged. That story about the throne could be a lie. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising to a fever pitch. Will you accept this? Will you bow to an Omega who cannot even name her own bloodline? Will you let our great pack be ruled by a woman who eats alone in a tower because she is too weak to command respect from servants? The words hit Cordelia like physical blows. She gripped the balcony railing, her knuckles white. Anna pressed close beside her, a warm, steady presence. She knows about the tower, Cordelia whispered. How does she know about the tower? Servants talk, Anna said grimly. And Evangeline pays well for information. Below, Bryce had gone very, very still. The temperature in the courtyard seemed to drop. His voice, when he spoke, was soft and terrible. Lady Evangeline, you have insulted my mate. You have questioned the will of the moon goddess. You have attempted to sow dissent among my pack. He took a step toward her. I will give you one opportunity to apologize. One, use it wisely. Evangeline's amber eyes flickered. For a moment, Cordelia thought she might back down. Then Evangeline smiled. It was not a nice smile. I will apologize, she said sweetly. When your Omega proves she is worthy of the throne she stumbled onto, I invoke the right of contention. Another gasp from the crowd. This one was different, excited, hungry. Several nobles straightened with renewed interest. Bryce's expression didn't change, but Cordelia saw his hands curl into fists at his sides. Right of contention, he repeated. You wish to challenge my fated mate for the position of Luna. I do. Right of contention is ancient law. It requires 3 trials, 3 tests of worthiness. If the challenger wins, she takes the Luna's place. Bryce's voice was flat. You understand that if you lose, the penalty is exile, complete and permanent. You would lose your pack, your family. Your name. Evangeline lifted her chin. I understand, and I am not afraid, because I will not lose to an archivist who cannot even stand in a room full of people without trembling. On the balcony, Anna grabbed Cordelia's arm. She's insane. She's completely insane. Bryce won't allow this. He can't. But Bryce was looking up. Not at Evangeline, not at the crowd, at the balcony, at Cordelia. Their eyes met across the distance, and in his silver gaze she saw something she hadn't expected. Not anger, not frustration, a question. Do you trust me? Cordelia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to retreat to her tower and her parchment and her safe, quiet life. She was not a fighter, she was not a leader. She was just Cordelia, the girl with the broken shoe, but the mark on her palm was warm. And the throne in the ballroom was humming, even now, a song only she could hear. She gave Bryce the smallest nod. He turned back to the crowd. Right of contention is granted, he announced. 3 trials, 3 chances to prove worthiness. The first trial will take place at the next full moon, 3 nights from now. Evangeline's smile widened. I look forward to it, Your Grace. She swept into a mocking curtsy, then turned and strode through the crowd, her silver-white gown trailing behind her like a wedding train. Her supporters followed, a river of pale blue flowing out of the courtyard and into the night. The remaining nobles dispersed slowly, murmuring among themselves, casting furtive glances up at the balcony where Cordelia stood. And then the courtyard was empty, lit only by guttering torches and the cold light of the crescent moon. Bryce remained where he was, alone in the center of the stones. He looked up at her again, and this time she could read his expression clearly. What have we done? Cordelia had no answer. She only had a glowing mark on her palm, a dead woman's journal full of cryptic warnings, and 3 days to become someone worthy of a throne she'd never wanted. Anna squeezed her hand. Well, the laundry girl said quietly, I suppose we'd better find you some proper shoes. The solarium felt smaller now, as if the walls had drawn closer while Cordelia was on the balcony. She stood in the center of the room, bare feet on cold stone, and tried to remember how to breathe. 3 days. She had 3 days until the first trial. 3 days to prepare for a challenge she didn't understand, against a woman who had spent her entire life training to be Luna. I'm going to be sick, Cordelia announced. No, you're not. Anna was already moving, her practical energy filling the space. She pulled dust sheets off furniture, revealing a velvet settee the color of midnight and a small tea table inlaid with mother of pearl. You're going to sit down and you're going to eat something and then we're going to make a plan. Philip! The chamberlain appeared in the doorway as if summoned by magic, though he'd probably been hovering in the corridor. His face was pale but composed, the face of a man who had served the Blackwell family for 40 years and was no longer capable of being truly surprised by anything. My lady, I need food, something substantial. Soup, bread, cheese, fruit, and tea. Hot tea. The kind that could strip paint. Anna ticked items off on her fingers. Also, find Magdalene. She's been waiting in the Alpha study for hours. Tell her Cordelia needs her. Philip looked to Cordelia for confirmation. She nodded weakly. And Lady Cordelia's measurements, Anna continued. Send someone to my cousin Myra in the wardrobes. She'll know what to bring. Dresses, shoes, underthings, nothing too elaborate yet. We don't know what she'll need, but something better than a torn ball gown. My lady. Philip's voice was gentle. I am the Chamberlain of Ironfang Keep. I have served 3 generations of this family. I am not an errand boy. Anna fixed him with a look that Cordelia had seen her use on stubborn stains and uncooperative fabric. Right now, you're whatever Lady Cordelia needs you to be. And Lady Cordelia needs food, her guardian, and clothes that don't smell like spilled champagne and terror. So yes, today you are an errand boy, a very distinguished one. Long pause. Then Philip's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Cordelia had ever seen on his face. As you say, my lady. He bowed and disappeared. Anna turned back to Cordelia, hands on her hips. Right, while we wait, you're going to tell me everything, every detail. Don't leave anything out. So Cordelia told her. She told her about the broken shoe and the stumble, about the throne's glow and the guard flying across the room, about Bryce's silver eyes and the mark that appeared on both their palms. About his mother's solarium and the journal with its cryptic warning, she will save him, or she will destroy him. I cannot see which. Anna listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each word. When Cordelia finished, she sat back on the velvet settee and let out a long breath. Okay, she said. Okay, so the dead Luna had visions, that's a lot. I don't know what to do, Anna. Cordelia's voice was small. I don't know how to fight Lady Evangeline. I don't know how to be a Luna. I don't even know how to be a mate. Bryce is a stranger, a terrifying, beautiful stranger who looks at me like I'm a puzzle he can't solve. He's not a puzzle you need to solve tonight. Anna reached over and took her hand. One thing at a time. First thing, the trials. Do you know what they are? Cordelia shook her head. The right of contention is ancient law. I've read about it in the archives, but only in passing. It's been centuries since anyone invoked it. The trials are supposed to test the worthiness of a potential Luna. Mind, body, and spirit. That's all I know. Mind, body, and spirit. Anna frowned. 3 trials, 3 nights. The first one is the full moon. That's 3 days from now, yes. Then we need to know what the first trial is. We need to prepare. Anna stood and began packing, her bare feet slapping against the stone. Bryce will know. He's the alpha. He has to preside over the trials. He can tell us what to expect. The right of contention is sacred law. Even the alpha can't interfere with the trials themselves if he shows favoritism. He doesn't need to show favoritism. He just needs to tell us what the trial is. That's not interference. That's basic information. Anna stopped packing and fixed Cordelia with a determined stare. You need to talk to him. Tonight, before Evangeline has time to scheme. The thought of facing Bryce again made Cordelia's stomach twist, but Anna was right. She couldn't hide in the solarium forever. Talk to him, she said. After I eat, after I see Magdalene, I need to understand something first. Understand what? Cordelia looked at the journal on the writing desk. Why the throne chose me. There has to be a reason. Thrones don't just choose people, no matter what Bryce told the crowd. Magic has rules, laws. If I can figure out why the Luna throne reacted to me, maybe I can figure out how to survive these trials. Before Anna could respond, the solarium door opened. Magdalene entered like a winter storm in human form. Her spectacles were perched on her nose, her gray hair was pulled back in its usual severe bun, and her expression was the same one she wore when an apprentice misfiled a crucial document. Disapproval mixed with the faintest hint of impending doom. But beneath all of that, Cordelia saw something else. Worry. Real, genuine worry. Cordelia. Magdalene's voice was clipped, but her hands trembled slightly as she removed her gloves. You have caused quite a commotion. I fell, my shoe broke. I've heard, repeatedly, from every servant, guard, and noble I passed on my way here. Magdalene walked to the settee and sat down with the stiff-backed posture of a woman who had never slouched in her life. The Alpha King kept me waiting in his study for over an hour. He asked me questions about you, your history, your parentage, your abilities. Cordelia's heart clenched. What did you tell him? The truth, that you were found as a child after a river-crossing accident, that I took you in because you could read and the keep needed archivists, that you have no known bloodline, no pack allegiance, and no magical training. Magdalene's eyes met hers. He seemed unsatisfied with these answers. Because they don't explain why the throne chose her, Anna said, settling onto the floor beside the settee. Magdalene, you've been the head archivist for what, 40 years? 43. Have you ever heard of anything like this? An Omega awakening a sacred artifact? A mate bond appearing without any prior connection? Magdalene was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful, measured, as if she were reading from a fragile manuscript. There are stories. She said slowly. Old stories, older than the Iron Fang keep itself. Stories of wolves who were not born to power but were chosen by it anyway. The archives contain fragments, damaged scrolls, half-burned codices, that speak of a time before the Great Pax, when the moon goddess walked among wolves in mortal form. Cordelia leaned forward. What kind of stories? Stories of ordinary wolves who became extraordinary. A shepherd who united the warring packs. A healer who stopped a plague with nothing but moonlight and herbs. A seamstress who wove a cloak that made the wearer invisible to enemies. Magdalene's spectacles caught the light. In every story, the wolf in question was marked, not by bloodline, by something else, something the goddess saw in them that no one else could. What happened to them, these chosen wolves? Magdalene's expression flickered. Some became legends, some became martyrs, and some, she paused, some simply vanished. As if the goddess had borrowed them for a purpose and then returned them to the earth when that purpose was complete. A cold silence settled over the room. Anna broke it first. That's not comforting, Magdalene. It was not meant to be comforting. It was meant to be truthful. Magdalene turned to Cordelia, and her severe expression softened, just slightly. I have raised you since you were small enough to fit in a filing drawer. I have watched you grow from a frightened orphan into a competent, intelligent young woman. I do not know why the throne chose you, but I know this, you are not a mistake. The goddess does not make mistakes. She makes choices, and she has chosen you. Cordelia's throat tightened. What if I'm not strong enough? What if Evangeline wins? Then Evangeline wins, and you go back to the archives, and you file things, and you live a quiet life. Magdalene reached out and took Cordelia's hand. a rare gesture of physical affection from a woman who communicated primarily through pointed looks and heavy sighs. But I do not think you will lose. Do you know why? Why? Because Lady Evangeline has spent her entire life being told she deserves power. She has never had to fight for anything. She has never had to prove herself. She expects the world to bow to her simply because she exists. Magdalene's grip tightened. You, on the other hand, have spent your entire life being told you are nothing. And yet here you are, sitting in a dead Luna's solarium, marked by the goddess herself, about to face a challenge that would terrify a lesser wolf. She released Cordelia's hand and stood. You are stronger than you know, Cordelia. You simply haven't had a reason to discover it yet. She walked toward the door, then paused. I will return to the archives. There are old texts that may help us understand the trials. Fragments of the Rite of Contention that have not been read in centuries. I will find them. And then she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of old paper and the weight of her words. Anna let out a breath. She's terrifying. I love her. She's always been like that. Cordelia stared at the door. I used to think she didn't care about me. Not really. I was just another orphan she'd taken in out of obligation. But tonight she threatened to fight the Alpha King for you, metaphorically. Through research, Anna grinned. That's love, Cordelia, archivist love, the most powerful kind. Philip returned shortly after with a tray of food, thick potato soup, crusty bread, soft cheese, sliced apples, and a pot of tea so dark and fragrant it could have revived the dead. Cordelia ate mechanically at first, then with growing hunger as her body reminded her that she hadn't eaten since breakfast. While she ate, Myra arrived with an armful of dresses. Anna's cousin was a tall, willowy woman with clever hands and a measuring tape perpetually draped around her neck. She took one look at Cordelia's torn ball gown and clicked her tongue. Disaster, Myra declared. Absolute disaster. But the bones are good. Small waist, decent shoulders. We can work with this. She spent the next 20 minutes taking measurements, draping fabric, and muttering to herself about silhouettes and color palettes. By the time she left, Cordelia had been outfitted in a simple wool gown of deep forest green, not a ball gown, not a servant's dress, but something in between, something that made her look like a person who might belong in a keep. You look like a lady, Anna said approvingly. A slightly terrified lady, but a lady nonetheless. I feel like an imposter. Good. That means you're doing it right. The moment you feel like you belong is the moment you've become one of them. Anna helped her with the buttons. Now. Time to face the Alpha King. Cordelia found Bryce in the Great Hall. He was alone, seated at the head of the long feasting table, a single candle burning beside him. The hall was vast and empty, the torches guttering low, the shadows deep and shifting. He had a goblet of wine in front of him, untouched, and he was staring at nothing. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened. You changed, he said. Anna's cousin works in the wardrobes. Cordelia walked toward him, her new shoes, soft leather flats, making no sound on the stone. I couldn't face Evangeline's supporters in a torn ball gown. You faced them from a balcony. I saw you. She stopped a few feet from his chair. You knew I was there. I always know where you are. He said it simply, without arrogance. A statement of fact. The bond mark, it's like a thread connecting us. I can feel you even when I can't see you. A warmth in my chest that wasn't there before. Delia pressed a hand to her own chest. She could feel it too, she realized. A faint, distant warmth that she'd attributed to anxiety, but it wasn't anxiety, it was him. That's unsettling, she admitted. Yes, his silver eyes met hers. It is. A long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. Two strangers bound by a goddess trying to understand what they were to each other. Need to know about the trials, Cordelia said finally. The Rite of Contention. What am I facing? Bryce gestured to the chair beside him. She sat. First trial, he said, is the trial of mind. It tests wisdom, knowledge, and judgment. In the old days, it was a series of riddles and legal disputes presented by the pack elders. The potential Luna had to prove she could rule with intelligence and fairness. Riddles? Cordelia's heart lifted slightly. I'm good at riddles. I'm good at puzzles. The archives are full of them. The elders will not make it easy. Evangeline has been studying for this her entire life. She knows the old laws, the bloodlines, the treaties. She was groomed to be a Luna. Cordelia's brief hope flickered. What about the second trial? The trial of body. Physical challenges, not combat. A Luna is not expected to be a warrior, though some are. But endurance, grace, the ability to withstand hardship. In the old texts, it was often a hunt. A journey through the wilds to retrieve a sacred object. Never hunted anything in my life. I've never even left the keep grounds. Bryce's jaw tightened. I know. The third trial. The trial of spirit. His voice dropped. This is the one that concerns me most. It is not a test of skill or knowledge. It is a test of essence. The potential Luna must prove that her connection to the moon goddess is true, that she is worthy of the sacred bond. How? How do you prove something like that? Bryce was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, leather-bound book. Older than the journal in the solarium. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed. This was my mother's, he said. I found it in her things after she died. I was too young to understand it then. I've read it many times since. It's a diary of sorts, but not of her daily life, of her visions. He opened the book to a marked page and handed it to Cordelia. The handwriting was the same as the journal in the solarium, elegant but hurried. The ink was faded brown, but the words were clear. The third trial is not a trial at all. It is a conversation. The goddess speaks to the worthy. She asks a single question, and the answer determines everything. I was asked, "What would you sacrifice for them?" I answered, "Everything." She found me worthy, but she wept as she said it. I did not understand why until later. Everything is a heavy price. Heavier than I knew. Cordelia looked up from the page. What did she sacrifice? Bryce's expression was unreadable. Her life. 9 years after she wrote this, she rode out to the eastern border because she had a vision of an attack. She saved the pack, dozens of lives, but she didn't come back. Candle flickered between them. I don't know if I can do this, Cordelia whispered. I know. Bryce reached out and covered her hand with his. His palm was warm, and the silver mark on his skin pulsed gently against hers. But you don't have to do it alone. I cannot interfere with the trials. The law forbids it, but I can prepare you. I can teach you. I can stand beside you even when I cannot stand for you. The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you help me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. The bond mark appeared, but that doesn't mean. It means everything. His voice was fierce, sudden, surprising them both. He pulled back slightly, composing himself. I have been alone for a very long time, Cordelia. Surrounded by people who wanted my power, my title, my bloodline. No one who wanted me. And then you fell into my mother's throne, and for the first time in 32 years, I felt something other than cold. He stood, and the candle flame wavered. I don't know if you're my fated mate because the goddess chose you or because the throne malfunctioned. I don't know if you'll win these trials or lose them. I don't know anything except this. When I touched you, I felt warm, and I will do whatever I can to keep that warmth alive. He offered her his hand. Let me help you, Cordelia. Let me teach you what I know. 3 days isn't much time, but it's what we have. Cordelia looked at his outstretched hand, at the silver mark glowing softly on his palm, at the man behind the Alpha King, lonely, uncertain, hopping. She placed her hand in his. 3 days, she said. Teach me. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real. Tomorrow, he said. Dawn, the Eastern Training Grounds, where something you can move in. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. And try not to fall. Despite everything, the trials, the threats, the terrifying unknown ahead, Cordelia felt her own lips twitch in response. Make no promises. My shoes have a history of betrayal. Bryce's smile widened just slightly. And in that moment, standing in the empty great hall with the Alpha King's hand in hers, Cordelia thought that maybe, just maybe, she could survive this after all. Later that night, long after the keep had fallen silent, Cordelia lay in an unfamiliar bed in a small chamber adjacent to the solarium. The sheets smelled like lavender, Anna's doing, no doubt, and the mattress was softer than anything she'd ever slept on. She should have been exhausted. She was exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind churned with everything she'd learned. The trials, the visions, Bryce's mother and her sacrifice, the journal entry that still haunted her, she will save him, or she will destroy him. I cannot see which. What did that mean? Save him from what? Destroy him how? And beneath all of it, a deeper question that she was afraid to examine too closely. Why did she care so much? She'd known Bryce Blackwell for less than a day. He was intimidating and intense and clearly carrying wounds she couldn't begin to understand. But when he'd taken her hand in the Great Hall, when he'd admitted to feeling warmth for the first time in years, something had shifted inside her. She didn't love him. She barely knew him. But she recognized him, the loneliness, the isolation, the feeling of being surrounded by people who didn't truly see you. She knew those things intimately. She'd lived them her entire life. Perhaps that was why the throne had chosen her. Not because she was powerful or noble or worthy in any traditional sense, but because she understood what it meant to be alone. And a Luna who understood loneliness might be exactly what a lonely Alpha King needed. It was a fragile hope. But it was all she had. Cordelia closed her eyes and let the warmth in her chest, the bond mark, connecting her to Bryce somewhere in the keep, lull her towards sleep. 3 days. She would not waste them. Deep in the keep, in a chamber far below the great hall, Lady Evangeline sat before a mirror of polished silver and brushed her golden hair with slow, deliberate strokes. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn. "Well?" she asked. A figure stepped into the candlelight. A woman, gray-haired and severe, her spectacles glinting. "She suspects nothing," Magdalene said quietly. "The girl believes I am on her side. She believes I am searching the archives for information to help her." The Alpha, distracted, focused on preparing her for the trials. He won't see the real threat until it's too late. Evangeline smiled at her reflection. "Good. The first trial is in 3 days. By the time the full moon rises, Cordelia will be disgraced, the Alpha will be vulnerable, and the path to the Luna throne will be clear." She set down her brush and turned to face the older woman. "Done well, Magdalene. The goddess will reward your loyalty." Magdalene's expression didn't change. But behind her spectacles, something flickered. Something that might have been triumph, or might have been something else entirely. "Goddess," Magdalene said, "rewards those who wait." And in the darkness of the chamber, the silver mirror seemed to glow, just for a moment, with the same light that had filled the Luna throne. The full moon rose over Ironfang Keep like a blessing, fat and silver-white, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with ancient magic. Cordelia stood at the window of her small chamber, watching it climb the sky, and pressed a hand to her chest where the bond mark pulsed warm and steady. 3 days had passed since she'd fallen into the Luna throne. 3 days of fear and discovery, and a growing warmth that had nothing to do with magic, and everything to do with a silver-eyed Alpha who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd stopped asking years ago. A knock at the door. "Come in." Anna entered, carrying a gown of deep midnight blue embroidered with silver threads. "Myra's final masterpiece. She says if you're going to face a den of wolves, you should look like the night sky." Cordelia touched the fabric. "It's beautiful." "It's armor." Anna helped her into it, then stepped back to examine her work. "You look like a Luna. Now go prove that you are one." The great hall blazed with torchlight. The noble families filled the benches in their house colors, pale blue, forest green, deep purple. Twin thrones sat on the dais, the Luna throne dark and waiting. Lady Evangeline stood near the seat of judgment in icy silver-white, her amber eyes gleaming with barely concealed triumph. When Cordelia entered, her lips curved. "Ah, the little archivist. I was beginning to think you'd fled." Cordelia remembered Bryce's lessons. "Stillness, breath, don't flinch." "I was admiring the moon," she said, her voice steady. "It's beautiful tonight." Before Evangeline could retort, the great doors opened and Bryce entered. Black jacket, black shirt, silver eyes that found Cordelia across the room and warmed. "Trial of mind will now begin," he announced. "The elders will present 3 questions. The pack will witness. The goddess will judge." Elders emerged, ancient wolves with centuries of wisdom carved into their faces. Elder Maris unrolled a scroll. "First question is a matter of law. A she-wolf has borne a child. The father refuses to acknowledge it. The child and mother face starvation. As Luna, what is your judgment?" Evangeline stepped forward immediately. "The law is clear. A child born outside a formal mating has no claim. The she-wolf should have been more careful. Hardship is unfortunate, but the law must be consistent." Cordelia took her seat on the platform. Her heart hammered, but her voice was clear. "Law, as written, supports Lady Evangeline's position. However, the law also states that the Luna is the mother of all wolves in the territory. My judgment is this: the Luna's household will provide shelter and sustenance for the mother and child, and the wolf who abandoned his responsibility will be summoned to explain himself, not as a legal matter, as a matter of honor." Elder Thuron, the blind one, smiled. The second question, history. 300 years ago, Luna Alara, the peacemaker, ended the blood feuds, but her reign ended in tragedy. What was her fatal mistake? Evangeline answered swiftly. She trusted too easily. She neglected to secure her alliances with blood oaths. A Luna must secure power through tangible bonds. Cordelia took a breath. Alara's mistake wasn't trusting too easily. It was that she stopped trusting herself. She had warnings about the rebellion. Her advisors told her. Her instincts told her. But she wanted so badly to believe in peace that she ignored the signs of war. The lesson is that wisdom requires seeing clearly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Elder Selene leaned forward. And how does one learn to trust their own judgment? Cordelia thought of the archives, of countless hours alone, finding patterns in chaos. By paying attention to details others overlook, by accepting that you'll sometimes be wrong and learning from it. Judgment isn't about being perfect. It's about caring enough to look closely. Elder Maris unrolled the final scroll. Her ancient voice carried through the silent hall. The third question. This is a matter of the heart. The Luna throne sat empty for 20 years. Many tried to claim it. All failed. You fell into it by accident and it awakened. The pack wants to know why you... Evangeline stepped forward, her voice dripping with false humility. I cannot speak to why the throne reacted to Cordelia. Perhaps the magic is fading, but I can speak to why I am worthy. I have trained my entire life. I know the laws and bloodlines. I have the political connections, the bearing, the beauty. The pack deserves a Luna who was born for this. Cordelia sat in the seat of judgment, the warmth of the bond mark steady in her chest. She thought about the question. Why you? She could cite the throne's reaction. The mate bond, the will of the goddess, all true, but not the whole truth. I don't know why the throne chose me, she said finally. I don't have a bloodline or political connections or any of the things a Luna is supposed to have. But I think maybe that's the point. The throne rejected every woman who was supposed to sit on it, every noble daughter who saw it as a prize. And then I fell into it by accident, a woman who never wanted power, who was just trying to fix her broken shoe. A soft laugh rippled through the crowd. Read the records of every Luna who came before. The ones who succeeded all had something in common. They didn't rule for themselves. They ruled for the pack. They made sacrifices. They loved the pack more than their own status or pride. She stood facing the crowd directly. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise this: I will pay attention, I will care. I will try every single day to be worthy of the trust the goddess has placed in me, not because I deserve it, because the pack deserves a Luna who will never stop trying to deserve it. She sat down, silence. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. Elder Thuron rose to his feet. In 300 years as an elder, I have never heard a more honest answer. Lady Evangeline gave us polished answers, rehearsed answers. You spoke of bloodlines and alliances and what you deserve. But the Luna is not a prize, Lady Evangeline. The Luna is a service, a sacred duty, and I do not believe you understand the difference. Evangeline's face went white. Elder Thuron! Silence. His voice cracked like a whip. He turned to Cordelia. You, child of no bloodline, understand what Lady Evangeline does not. Worthiness is not a birthright. It is a choice made every day. That is why the throne chose you, because you are willing. He struck his staff against the stone floor. The sound echoed like a bell. By my judgment as elder, the trial of mind is decided. Cordelia has proven her wisdom. Lady Evangeline has not. A roar erupted from the crowd. The Ironwood Greens were on their feet. Even the Night River Purples looked grudgingly impressed. Evangeline stood frozen, fury twisting her beautiful face. This is not over. There are still 2 trials. I will not be defeated by an archivist. She stormed from the hall, but before she reached the doors, Elder Maris spoke again. Evangeline, the right of contention requires 3 trials, but the law also states that if a challenger is found to have acted with dishonorable intent, the remaining trials may be waived by unanimous vote of the elders. Evangeline froze. What are you implying? Elder Selene stepped forward, her silver hair gleaming. We are not implying, we are stating. For 3 days we have investigated. We have questioned servants and guards and nobles, and we have discovered the truth. She raised her voice so all could hear. Lady Evangeline conspired to sabotage Cordelia before the trials began. She bribed a servant to damage Cordelia's shoes the night of the ball, hopping to cause an accident. She planted rumors of dark magic. And she coerced testimony from witnesses who were paid to lie. The crowd erupted. Evangeline's face went gray. Lies, all lies, you have no proof. Elder Maris raised a hand. Philip the Chamberlain stepped forward from the shadows. Beside him walked a woman in a plain gray dress, a servant Cordelia recognized from the laundry. I was paid to damage the shoes, the servant said, her voice trembling but clear. Lady Evangeline's handmaiden gave me gold and instructions. I didn't know why. I just needed the money, I'm sorry. Evangeline's composure shattered. This is a conspiracy. The Alpha King has orchestrated this to protect his little archivist. Bryce stepped forward, his silver eyes cold as winter steel. You conspired to harm my fated mate. You attempted to subvert sacred law. You lied to the elders and to the pack. His voice was quiet, terrible. By the ancient laws, the penalty is not merely exile, it is stripping. You will lose your pack, your name, and your wolf. Evangeline's amber eyes went wide with true terror. No, you can't. I am a daughter of Silverbrook, my father. Your father has already been informed. Elder Thuron's voice was grim. He has disavowed you. He chose the honor of his pack over a daughter who brought shame upon it. Evangeline crumpled. Not dramatically, truly crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. 2 guards stepped forward and took her arms. As they led her from the hall, she looked back once. Not at Bryce. At Cordelia. And in her eyes, beneath the fury and the fear, Cordelia saw something unexpected. Relief. As if a weight she'd carried her entire life, the weight of expectation, of ambition, of never being enough, had finally been lifted. Then she was gone. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with the night's revelations. The Silverbrook pack departed in shame. The other houses lingered, recalibrating, reassessing. Cordelia sat in the seat of judgment, trembling. Bryce appeared beside her. "It's over." There were supposed to be 3 trials. The elders voted unanimously to waive the remaining trials. Evangeline's dishonorable conduct invalidated her challenge. He offered his hand. "Come, there's something I want to show you." She took his hand and let him lead her from the great hall, through quiet corridors, until they reached a door she'd never seen. He pressed his marked palm to the wood, and it swung open. A hidden garden. Moonflowers blooming along stone paths. A small fountain burbling in the center. The full moon shining down like a blessing. "My mother's garden," Bryce said. "Her secret place. I used to come here as a child after she died. I would sit by the fountain and talk to her." Cordelia looked around, breathless. "Why are you showing me this?" He turned to face her, and in the moonlight his severe features softened. "Because I want you to know me, not the Alpha King, the boy who lost his mother, the man who has been alone for so long he forgot what warmth felt like." He took both her hands. "You spoke in the hall about worthiness being a choice. I want to choose you every day for the rest of our lives, not because the goddess demands it, because I want to." Cordelia's eyes burned. "I don't know how to be a mate. I don't know how to be a Luna." "Neither do I," he smiled, that rare, genuine smile. "But we learn together, and when we fall, we help each other back up." He pressed his marked palm against hers. The silver crescents glowed where they touched. "Cordelia, will you be my mate?" "Not because you have to be, because you choose me the way I choose you." She looked at their joined hands, at the glowing marks. At the moonflowers and the fountain and the hidden garden. She thought about the journal in the solarium. She will save him, or she will destroy him. I cannot see which. She thought about what she'd learned in 3 impossible days. That strength came in unexpected forms. That loneliness recognized loneliness. That love wasn't a thunderbolt, it was a choice, made again and again. She looked up at Bryce. At this man who was fierce and lonely and trying so hard to be worthy. She said, "I choose you, I choose this, I choose us." He kissed her. Soft and sweet and full of promise, not acclaiming. A beginning 1 year later the solarium had changed. The dust sheets were gone. Fresh flowers bloomed on the writing desk. The stained glass ceiling had been repaired, and moonlight poured through in rivers of color. The portrait of Bryce's mother still hung above the fireplace, but now a second portrait hung beside it. Cordelia, seated in the Luna throne. Not stiff and formal, but laughing, her hair escaping its pins, her eyes bright with joy. Beneath the portraits, Cordelia sat at the writing desk, a leather journal open before her. She dipped a quill in ink and wrote, "1 year ago I fell into a throne by accident. I thought it was the worst moment of my life. I was wrong. It was the beginning of everything. Bryce and I were mated under the full moon in his mother's hidden garden. Anna stood as my witness." Philip cried, though he denies it. Magdalene apologized for her role in Evangeline's scheme. She had been threatened, coerced, and has spent the past year earning back trust she never needed to lose. I forgave her. She was the closest thing to a mother I ever had. Some bonds are stronger than mistakes. The pack has flourished. The Luna throne glows softly now, all the time, as if content. The nobles have accepted me, some grudgingly, some genuinely. I still file things sometimes when the weight of leadership grows too heavy. There is comfort in order, in making sense of chaos, and Bryce. Bryce is no longer lonely. Neither am I. She set down the quill and looked up as the solarium door opened. Bryce entered, his silver eyes warm. He crossed to her and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Writing again?" "Always." She smiled up at him. "Someone has to record this story." He glanced at the journal. "And how does it end?" Cordelia looked at the moonflowers on the desk, at the glowing mark on her palm. At the man who had chosen her every day for a year and counting. "It doesn't," she said. "It's still being written." Bryce smiled and took her hand, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "Good," he murmured against her hair. "I'm not ready for it to end." Neither was she, and in the solarium, beneath the watchful eyes of the portraits, the journal lay open on the desk. The pages stirred in a gentle breeze, and if anyone had been watching, they might have seen new words appear, elegant handwriting, warm and satisfied. She saved him. not through sacrifice. Through choice, I was wrong to fear. Some threads once spun become tapestries. My son is happy. My daughter by choice is happy. The pack is healing. This is the ending I could not see. This is the ending they earned. The words faded, but the warmth remained. If you enjoy reading this story, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for reading.